Hello again, everyone. This is Jan from New York City, and my channel name is Jan from New York City Saves Money. Hey, how's everybody doing today? Just thought I'd share a little bit of a phone call chat with Steve. Yeah. Some of you may know him as the recipe guy. Some of you may know him as the cash question guy. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about cards. Remember a couple of weeks ago we did a show like this, but we really spoke about credit card advantages and disadvantages, but this time around we're going to talk about debit cards. Now, don't get me wrong, I love debit cards too, like a lot of people, but to be honest with you, they're not always the panacea or the perfection plus thinking that we may think it is. And we're going to talk about that. Hi Steve, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm okay. Thank you so much for calling in. We're talking today about debit cards. One of the advantages, though, I mean, we have to say it, I have to give mention, it is convenient. You could do online shopping, it's a little safer than just, walking around with greenbacks, a lot of greenbacks. I mean, to that, there is definitely an advantage. You can move your money around, and absolutely, it is convenient. But there could be a few disadvantages of using a debit card over a credit card. Steve, did you say that there might have been some situation that you ran into when you were using a debit card at one time?
Yes. This goes back probably to Christmas, right around Christmas time of 2002. Me and my oldest nephew, he was about 12 years old at the time, we went to the movies. He and I used to like, and we still do from time to time when we meet up, like to go to the movies. And he wanted to see Made in Manhattan. Well, the line at the theater was a little lengthy, so I decided to go over to the kiosk and just put my card in and get a child ticket for him and an adult for me. Well, we went and saw the movie. Everything was great. I always monitor my accounts, but I noticed after about 4 or 5 days, I thought to myself, where's this charge at, or why hasn't this money come out? That was on the 23rd of December when I went to the movies with my nephew. Finally, after the new year, January 3rd, the money comes out of my account. I didn't exactly like the 10-day processing time for that money to come out, because usually, under most circumstances, when you do a debit card transaction, it's usually pretty rapid when it happens. You slide the card, you put in your PIN number.
That's really, excuse me, Steve, that's highly unusual, isn't it?
Yes, usually it is, because debit card is usually a right then and there transaction. The money usually comes out within, once you put in your PIN.
The reason I jumped in on that question is because I know that, in my opinion, okay, and this is my opinion, and you could throw it out with the bathwater, but this is where a credit card gives a person wiggle room as opposed to a debit card, because in 9 out of 10 cases, one of the immediate disadvantages for those trying to buy a little time is that a debit card, the funds are released immediately. So I could see where you were frustrated. How did that work out? I mean, did you have to take any action or what?
No, I never had to take any action. I just kept monitoring my account. But after the new year, January 3rd of 2003, the transaction finally cleared my account. I didn't like that. And one thing I need to point out about a debit card is, let's say you go to a hotel and you make a reservation. All right, sometimes when you go to check in, they put a deposit for incidentals on your card. On a debit card, it can take up to 14 days to get that money back, because that money does come out of your actual checking account. But if you put it on a credit card, it is solely a pre-authorization. No money is touched. it just comes off your credit line. But a majority of the time, the money will return back to your credit card in half the time, if that is of any
Wow.
benefit to people out there.
Wow, no, thank you so much for pointing that out. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back. Hey, I'm back again. Hey, Steve, thanks so much for sticking around. We're continuing our talk today about the advantages and disadvantages of debit card use. We're really going to focus today mainly on the disadvantages. I mentioned earlier, one big advantage is its convenience, and yes, it is, and it's a great way to move money around. But we'll talk more about the advantages on part 2 tomorrow, so you may want to come back tomorrow for that. So, Steve, I understand that there was another situation regarding debit cards that was not the greatest. Would you like to share that?
Sure. This was not me personally, but this was a person that I knew slightly better than an acquaintance, but not exactly a friend. So the story goes like this. It was during Christmas time, and he was trying to purchase something from Amazon. He put in his order, thought everything was hunky-dory, no problems, and then about a day and a half later, Amazon contacts him and says, "You don't have enough funds in your account. We're trying to process your order." Okay. So the person goes, moves some money over to where the money can go through and the transaction would clear. All right. Everything was fine, so he thought. What he didn't realize is he had two other charges or two other transactions coming through on the back burner that he didn't know about.
Ooh.
So he wound up getting hit with 2 bounce fees, $40.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Right, but it actually gets a little better. There's a happy ending to this story. So he goes to his credit union a couple of days later, sees an advisor, sits down, has a chat, and come to find out, because he had been with that credit union at least a good 10 years and never defaulted, the late fees or the bounce fees were waived and the money was given back to him. So there is a happy side to it.
Oh my gosh, I am so happy to hear, for that person. That had to be kind of a shell shocker, especially with the additional $40 bouncing fees. You see, clearly there are disadvantages with debit cards, but there are other disadvantages that I would like to mention as well. With the debit card, you could be using them for 10 years, and it will never, ever, ever improve your credit score, which unfortunately, whether we like it or not, I call it Mr. FICO. I would like to call it different names, but I'm a polite person. Therefore, I can think of a few too. Funny, ironically, beginning with similar letters, but we're keeping it clean on the show. But the thing is, you don't improve your credit score, and you could have been using that debit card for over a decade. So not good. You really have to have, at the very least, am I right or wrong, at least one credit card. Right, Steve?
That's absolutely right.
For that reason alone. So the other thing is, and we touched upon it earlier, there is no grace period. When you use your debit card, ba-boom, money gone. Now, that unique situation you had, that was absolutely a fluke. I mean, I was astounded when you just said that, about 10 days went by before they took out the funds?
That's correct. But I also had to factor in, but even with Christmas being a couple of days later than you had your New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, I still think that the transaction should have occurred a few days sooner. That's just me.
Absolutely. But, again, you do bring up a really good point. See, this is another acknowledgement of being careful about using that card around the holidays. No. And another disadvantage, you could be using that same debit card forever, and you're never going to see a reward point. Member reward points? Reward points are fun, wouldn't you say, Steve?
They are, because what people don't realize, for example, just to put this out there in general, I myself have an American Express card. Now, as I make purchases on it, I'm actually, for a certain amount of dollar that I spend, I'm earning points for that. And those points are redeemable at different online retailers. For example, I can use my reward points right off my credit card to make purchases at Amazon, and that's just to name one.
That's great. That is beyond convenient. And also, I think in traveling or booking rooms, maybe some people accept those, right?
Right. Somehow, another way, this is another avenue altogether, but somehow PayPal, which is another avenue altogether as a separate storyline. Somehow there's a way that you can make purchases through PayPal involving linking your credit card up with it somehow, and it has its benefits. It's a good system from what I've never personally used it myself, but the way that it works, it has to do with transferring money.
Right. So these are things you cannot do. Now, I don't think, I'm not sure about this, so please don't come after me, debit card police, but I don't think that there's any fraudulent protection on debit cards. The jury's not out on that. I have to do my research about that. But
I have the answer for that.
what is the answer, Steve?
The answer is this: if a charge comes up that you are not responsible for, whether it is on a debit or credit card, regardless of which one it is, you are 100% backed by your financial institution. You're not liable to pay for it.
Okay, well, that's great to know. And this is why I'm so glad that you are part of this channel on a regular basis. Steve, thanks so much for calling in. Hey, guys and gals, we're going to pick up on this tomorrow. So come back tomorrow and we'll talk more about the advantages of a debit card. Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you again, Steve.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.